All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Rentas. I'm a licensed mental health professional, coach, educator, and wellness expert for individuals and organizations. I help people and organizations be their best through holistic coaching and professional development that successfully navigates change and disruption. So my clients reach excellence even when things seem uncertain. I believe that the key to success is continuous growth and adaptation. My holistic coaching and professional development programs provide clients with the tools that they need to navigate change and disruption while achieving excellence, right? So, through a combination of cutting edge research, practical skills training, and personalized coaching, I help individuals and organizations thrive in today's fast paced environment.
Awesome. And we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into each of those areas that you just mentioned. And I want to start with how you frame the problem, right? Because just to give a little high level to this, when we think about how are we going to reach our ideal customers with our marketing, how are we going to be able to create messaging that really resonates with the right people? There's different kind of parts of that, right? One part is the problem that you solve, the other part is this, the solutions to those problems, and then, your ideal or your target customer.
Mhm.
So I want to start out with just exploring a little bit more detail. If you could describe, in addition to to change and disruption, the specific problems that you help your customers solve.
Sure. So with individuals and we're looking at changes in their lifestyle, career disruption, managing career transitions and uncertainty, developing a new plan towards a goal that they've been struggling, to achieve in a way that allows them to engage in emotional flexibility, improve optimism, improve curiosity, and improve problem solving skills while really tapping into their unique strengths and things that make them successful. A lot of folks often compare themselves and others and what they think that and how they're supposed to achieve things and what works. And often it's really a journey of understanding what works for you and being curious and testing ideas and trying new things and giving yourself the grace and compassion to move through that journey in a way that allows you to build on that and create sustainability. So, with individuals and organizations, I'm helping them through coaching and development programs that allows them to really understand their unique perspectives, their unique strengths, how they relate to others, how that language with themselves relates to um, you know, how they work with others and also developing relationships, right? And improving that relationship with yourself so that you can improve that relationship with others. Often with the work that I do with organizations, it's around empowering leaders to really help them understand how to become better leaders in a way of the empathy, understanding that being open to new ideas and understanding that each one of your employees is a different person, right? They have their own way of doing things. And part of this as a leader is to understand that unique perspective and bringing that out of your employee, but also understanding the changes and uncertainties that are happening within an organization and navigating that in a way that allows the organization to continue to grow and not downsize and not continue chaos and creating that orchestration in a way that allows people to grow and feel psychologically safe. That's another huge component in what a lot of that I do. By trade and training, I am a clinician, a mental health professional. So I've been trained in understanding mental health and relationships and working with a lot of different individuals. And part of this is really understanding that that conversation is different for each person and how that could be achieved through the overall organizational goals.
And of all the different, I imagine that your career, like most of us, has evolved over time. As you're building, to this current version of your business, right?
Mhm.
Of all the different types of problems that you could help people solve and all different types of situations, can you walk us through a little bit about how your decision making process kind of worked in coming to this particular version of it? Was it something you kind of started out with this as the specific interest? Was it something that evolved over time?
Mhm. Well, it started with the idea of I wanted to delve into creating a business centered around coaching and consulting, but specifically around my experience of what I've seen through personal transformation and being within organizations through a lot of tumultuous times, right? I've come from a huge nonprofit sector and background where there's a lot of uncertainty. There's, a lot of red tape sometimes. There's not enough resources. Things happen. There are changes in the landscape. And that unfortunately affects nonprofits a lot more than for-profit companies, right? So it's been a skill that I've learned throughout my experience as a clinician and administrator and helping helping to grow those programs is to really understand how can you look at your changes in a way that allows you to move with it instead of resisting through it, instead of fighting through it, right? When we engage in resistance, we're not allowing ourselves to engage in growth. We're moving against it. We're not allowing the process of release to happen. And as a result, then we're causing ourselves more distress, right? So part of this is really understanding and how you can move along the continuum of change in a way that you're also understanding you're working with humans, right? Personalities and understanding that and knowing, yes, we have organizational strategy. Yes, we have to merge this organization or acquire this organization, but how can we do it in a way that is humanistic, that is still employee centered, and still also will improve the outcomes that you have with your customers and your clients. If your organization has disgruntled employees and ineffective systems and things that are not helping, that is going to affect your client outcomes. And if you're an organization that's highly impacting a community, those outcomes spill into the community. And then what ends up happening is that communities then get disrupted. Programs come in and out, people don't get the help that they need. And we continue this ongoing cycle of, opening up programs and kind of letting things fade out. And we really don't end up helping those that we really set out to.
Yeah, and I love that. And it seems like from the way you described it, this was something that it was something that you already kind of felt strongly about as you
Yes.
launched this, right? And the reason I'm asking that, reason that's also one of my favorite questions too to start out with is, oftentimes when people want, like you mentioned, you wanted to do something that was coaching and consulting. Was that the other part of
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes.
So, we start with something, we want to build a business, right? And we know we have this general framework. Oh, I know I want to do coaching and consulting, but then it can get so easy to get kind of a little bit confused about, well, what type, right? And some people, like the way you described it for yourself, was you really started with a pretty clear idea of what type of coaching and consulting. And for people that are listening, to kind of like to know that like it's okay to trust your intuition about that, or the things that you really care about. You mentioned something about people and kind of building their strengths or building on their strengths. That's really very much how I look at it with either companies or individual entrepreneurs. Is you have certain strengths, and the best way for you to be able to be successful, or the I guess the best strategy for success is to really tap into those strengths, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, go
and
ahead.
and to also understand that it's okay to test things, and also empowering employees to step up, right? What I've often found, and sometimes in crisis and chaos in these organizations, there are untapped employees who have never been given the opportunity to step up and to run with something. People tend to sometimes play it safe. Well, so and so is always good on this, or so and that. And what I found is that when you really get to know who you're working with and who's around, you'd be surprised what strengths could be used for something else, and then allowing that person to step up in that role and to show up, right? They feel great. They're empowered. They feel they can see the results. They were trusted with something that was very important to the organization. So all these opportunities allow you to improve that employee engagement and relationship. And then eventually it trickles into, it shows up in the work ends up becoming great because employees feel better about themselves. They feel better about where they're working and who and why. So a lot of times I found that, if you just have that extra conversation with somebody and really look at somebody's background and what they've done, you'd be surprised kind of like what are the hidden nuggets that they have.
Yeah, and again, the same lesson I think applies to yourself, to myself, to other people listening that are entrepreneurs or founders or building their own business. It's like trust your own strengths.
Hmm.
You're your organization, right? So when
Hmm.
you're able to really kind of bring the best of yourself to the challenge, which is building a business, then you're able to really express that in a unique way and one that's going to make you a lot happier and more successful, I think.
Hmm.
Let's dive into a little bit. You talked a little bit about specific solutions. You mentioned coaching and consulting, which I think some people can kind of go, well, what's the real difference between that? On a real tactical level, can you describe, what is the difference between the coaching and consulting work, the specific solution, what that looks like when you're actually engaged with clients?
Sure. So when I'm working with an individual and organization around, providing coaching solutions, I'm helping folks really understand the tools that are at their disposal in order for them to empower themselves to find those solutions, test those solutions, work on it themselves, work with it within a group, test that with their managers, and really put that into play themselves, right? I'm providing those tools, I'm guiding you along the process. It's very hands off, right? I'm the guide, right? When it comes to consulting, I'm providing, more of the tactical direct information, providing, that rich market research and the ways of doing things because this is tested true and you should try it this way, right? It's very different as opposed to coaching where I'm guiding you through it. I'm helping you around that, right? I'm not exactly launching it for you. I can be there to help you do that. But when it comes to more of our consulting solutions, it's more around these are the frameworks. You should apply it in this way. This is tested true in what we've done before, and this is our results. And let's also track that and make sure that we're hitting those goals.
And kind of similar to my first question, was that something, that framework of those two types of solutions, if you think coaching and consulting, two approaches to help them solve that problem, is that something that you started out with? Is that something that evolved over time to its current iteration?
No, it's something that I've always started with. It's something that I also enjoy doing. Part of also the wonderful thing about building your business is you could build it whatever way you want, right? In the ways of making sure that you're doing things that you like, working with the folks that you really want to work with, doing the things that you never got the chance to do before, right? And I love coaching, but I also love consulting and providing those solutions and creating those solutions in a way for you to implement them immediately, right? So that part of this is also what I was comfortable in doing and what I enjoy doing it because I want to do this for a long time. Part of what I really enjoy is that building a business is doing something that you love, that you enjoy, that you're connected with, that this is something that you keep doing even when you're tired, right? And when that's not happening, that's an opportunity for you to really reanalyze, what is going on here that I'm not enjoying what I'm doing? What happened that I started, going to a trajectory of something that I didn't want? Where did that influence come from? Where did that expectation or that I'm supposed to do it this way? So this is the way that I always wanted to do it, and I hope to continue to do it.
I love that. And you mentioned something that really popped out to me, working with the folks that you really want to work with, right? Because that perfectly now segues into my next question for you, which is describing your ideal customer. And I know that's a very open-ended and broad question, but a big challenge that a lot of people have is, especially when you're starting something, it's almost like any customer is a good customer, right? It's just, you just need clients, or you just want to start getting revenue, which is understandable. But there's a huge difference, as you just mentioned, between working with the type of customers and clients that you really enjoy working with, that really value your services, versus working with maybe people that aren't that great a fit. So, I know you mentioned that you work with organizations and individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little bit more detail about your general customer types to begin with, and then we'll dive into a little bit about like how you kind of segment who's your ideal.
Sure. With anybody, whether they're an individual or an organization, I look to work with those who are curious, who always are asking questions, and they're always looking for new ways of doing things, right? They're not stuck in the status quo. They're realizing that something is not working, and they really are motivated to change and they're ready to change, right? What we talk about in mental health are the stages of change. And there is, the pre-contemplation change, pre-contemplation stage where you're contemplating making a change, but you're still not there, right? And that's not a great space to be at to initiate something. We can have a conversation, we can explore things, but it's probably not the right time to work together, or there's probably other things you still have to develop, or look for, or maybe I'm not the right person, right? So curiosity, being able to be open to new ideas, and having a willingness to learn and an enthusiasm for growth, and understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, and that this is a process. So that goes for individuals and organizations alike.
It seems like from your description there, you mentioned a couple of times about, like, maybe we're not the right fit, or this isn't the right thing for you. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like you're pretty comfortable with the notion that not everybody's the right fit, right? So, I can imagine, you can please correct me if I'm wrong, that you've had conversations with prospects, and maybe in that conversation initially talking to them, and you realize they're not really fitting within that. Maybe you're not able to bring what they need in that particular situation. Am I kind of on the right track with that?
Yeah. And that's what it is in the beginning. It's an exploration. It's a consultation. It's kind of understanding, what is your problem? What are you looking for? What is my background? What's my experience? How can I help you? This would be the process if we would work together, and clarifying that so that people understand what they're getting involved in, right? And really understanding that, part of this is, I want people to have results. So my clients' successes are my success, right? So the more that people can have those successes, that's a testament to my work, right? And if you're not ready to do that, that's okay, and I'm not going to push that, right? Not everybody is in that place. But often what I found, and they don't talk a lot about this in business, but you're probably going to often say more no's than yes. Because especially in the beginning, as you're trying to filter through who you're trying to work with and things like that, not everything is always aligned, but it gives you an opportunity to really focus on each job and project in a way that really helps you understand, okay, so is this a good process? Do I need to tweak this? Am I doing this in the right way? So part of this is allowing yourself to be okay with, you don't need to have every client, and also dealing with rejection when a client doesn't want to work with you. That can bring up a lot of feelings of rejection, imposter syndrome, questioning yourself. But part of this is being honest with each other, because then you're not going to get the results that you want if it's not aligned, right? So I want to make sure that there's that alignment, and that you understand that, this is how it's going to look like, right? And this is the work that's going to be involved, and the checkpoints, right? And some folks, they want instant gratification. They want results right away. What do you mean? And i'm I'm not for you then. That's not how I work, right? I want to make sure that whatever results you have, it stands a test of time, and also I want folks to grow, and not always depend on my services too, right? Part of this is to help clients grow. If we work together for a while, that's great. But part of this is, at one point I won't be here, or you won't be here, right? So how can we make sure that it's a fruitful engagement, that you get the most out of this?
Have you in the way you perceive this, or you approach this, and figuring out who's the right fit and where you're able to add the most value, and help people the best, have you had any challenges as you've built the business really expressing that in your messaging, like, what you write on your website, what you post on LinkedIn? Because it's very challenging, right? It's very challenging to take that and be able to figure out how, okay, now how do we express that to somebody who's never heard of you before, who's just, maybe they got referred to you, but they're
Mm-hmm.
landing on your website or they're on your LinkedIn page. Have you had any challenges really kind of converting that point of view into actual, like, day-to-day marketing?
Well, it's also how I set up my site, right? folks can either reach out, you can send a message if that's what you want to do. If you're ready to seek some type of service, you can apply. It's an application. It's not per se that we're going to immediately work with one another. I need to understand your problem. How can I help you? What exactly are you looking for? Some of the questions I ask are, how long has this been going on for? What have you tried in the past that has worked or hasn't worked? Why is it an issue now? Right. And what have you done in the past to try to help it? Right. So that I kind of understand where you are. So there's on my site, it's not something that you can immediately, sign up for my services and book me, right? There's still kind of that exploration and understanding. Yes, this is who I am. This is what I can do. And if developing resilience in your life or organization, requires that opportunity to have an open mind and willingness to grow. So if that's the case, then reach out to me, right? I make that very clear in my messaging. That this is going to require you to really, commit to this. Is something that you're open to, sure. Reach out, we can talk more. So I make sure that to be very clear so that you can inquire more, so we can have more of a conversation and understand where you are.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think that's what you just described is really what it takes to overcome one of the biggest challenges of messaging, of expressing something on a static thing like a website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is making that decision and saying, like, for yourself, I know these are the people that I'm going to be able to help, or however you word it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being able to commit to that to the degree it always can evolve, right? But to be able to say, I know this is who I'm best suited for right now, and it's okay with me if people land on my website or however they find you and they're like, I don't know, I'm not ready, to come out, it's not important enough to me. It's almost like messaging can be a nice filter, right?
Yes.
To make sure that it's just as important to be able to say to the people, or the people getting there that aren't a good fit, for them to see that they're not the right fit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and to be very clear as to how I work and my background, right? I am very clear on my website about my credentials, my background, who I've worked with. I'm easily found on the internet. You can even find me through the site to LinkedIn, so that it gives me an opportunity to really showcase my background if anybody wants to learn more about me. So I'm very transparent. I give folks, the information that they need, let them know how I do it, and let them choose for themselves. And also give folks the space also to make that decision, not be pushy, not constantly kind of encroaching in their space. Giving the time to things to simmer and to kind of gestate in a way that lets folks to also think about it, right? I can all the things that I think about and what I've purchased and the folks that I've worked with, those folks never pressured me. This was something that I was ready to do. I knew who I wanted to work with. I knew the expectation, and I went for it, right? But the minute that you keep creating kind of like this pushy, kind of encroaching way, it lets people feel like, they don't have the opportunity to make a choice. And people want to feel like they can make a choice. They don't want to be pigeonholed into something. So I give that space. I let it, simmer a bit, or maybe I'll revisit this later on and I'll check in with you, right? But it's not something that I'm constantly following up. Or if I'm working with somebody, this is another thing I often found, folks just running for a testimonial right away, and you haven't finished working with that individual or company or organization yet, right? And even when I've had that experience where I've been testing a product or a service in a way and they're already asking me for testimonials and then being incisive about it, it actually left the worst taste in my mouth about what I was doing, before you even started asking me about, like, why, what's the sense of urgency here, folks, right? Can I finish? We started here. So I find it very important, just like in the therapeutic process, giving folks the space to make change. And if they want to make change, they're gonna show up. They're gonna reach out to you when they're ready. When somebody is ready to do that, all systems go.
I want to really kind of dwell on that for a second with you, because it's, I think, for people that we're surrounded by examples of pushy marketing, we're surrounded by examples of pushy sales methodologies, whatever, right? It's where we wind up at we ask for an ebook or we subscribe to a newsletter. Next thing you know, we're getting like a bunch of freaking, all this stuff, right? And for people that are trying to figure out, okay, like how do I make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward? How do I make sure that I'm really not just being too laid back about it, right? Because there is such a thing of being like, if they're, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're fostering that connection, fostering that conversation. But I'm really glad that you brought that up because it is kind of a fine balance, right? You have to know the timing. You have to be able to get a sense of, like we said about asking for a referral or asking for a testimonial. It's like, if you're still using it, if you just started using it, that might not be the right time. But if it's not the right time, it doesn't help to keep pushing you because all that's going to do is just drive you away. And I think the same lesson can be applied toward whether it's your website or my website or somebody else listening. It's do the best job you can of facilitating that conversation, of being very clear about how you can help and who you can help and what the impact of that is going to be. But be very careful that it doesn't go over the line to now all of a sudden somebody expresses interest and now they're at the other side of a hard sell, right? So on a tactical level, on a day-to-day level, do you follow up with people to some degree? If let's say somebody's, I don't know if you have like a subscription or something like an email list or something, like how do you kind of go around or how do you go about making sure that you're kind of nurturing that conversation at the beginning, even for people that may not be ready to go ahead and commit to even a consultation? Do you have a way that you kind of nurture that a little bit?
Well, part of it is, the journey of really understanding who they are, right? And maybe that part of it is market research, understanding, who the target customer is, who they work with, the network, the industry that they're in, what are the common problems that are occurring around them that they may or may not be aware of. That might be a hook for them to kind of see that you are paying attention to some of these things. So often what I found is that some clients are not aware of some of the industry changes or things that are coming along the way. I am very forward thinking. I am thinking 3, 6, 9 months ahead, and trends in so many different areas. So what ends up happening is that people put their heads down, the day to day, the work, the drudgery of everything that's happening, and they don't pay attention to kind of the industry news, seeing what's the trending articles, white papers, news reports, things that are saying, hey, bells, this is what's going on in the industry, right? Because everybody's just used to the day to day. I do that a lot. So before I'm even reconnecting with somebody, I'm doing homework. I'm understanding exactly who they are, company reports, public reports, kind of who is on their executive team, what is their organizational strategy, their organizational strategy. Sometimes folks put in reports for the next 5, 10 years. What is exactly their roadmap, right? Maybe I don't belong in that roadmap, or maybe I can find myself in how I can interject myself. So even before I even start kind of following up, I really need to understand who this person is. And is there anything beyond this that we're not seeing also that could be something that can get them to pay attention and reconsider, right? So part of it is understanding who they are, reaching out to them in the right method of communication, whether it's email or LinkedIn, or scheduling something, whether it's appropriate virtual or in person, right? And understanding how that relationship gets fostered differently, right? I found myself, I'm more than sure a lot of folks this year, doing much more in-person events, right? So you're seeing much more people, you're having conversations. A lot of folks don't want to, have so much of that virtual one-on-one, especially if you want people to know, like, and trust you, right? And if you're a newcomer in the game, people need to hear who you are and what you have to offer. And that involves talking to a lot of people, and just getting your name out there so that they just know who you are. You want to be seen, you want to be heard, and you want to be found. And that requires you to do a number of things, which includes having conversations and having conversations with unlikely people that you wouldn't expect. So even then, it's a delicate balance of constantly doing the market research, understanding who this client is and their evolving needs. How can I be part of that? Or maybe I'm not part of that. Or maybe I know somebody who, and I will refer them to the right, listen, here's this resource. I love sharing information with everybody, whether you're my client, friend, family member, whatever it is. I love just, hey, by the way, I learned this, you should look this up, So just even leaving that resource to that person leaves an impression of like, you're caring about the problem. You understand what it takes to solve that problem, and you're okay with, you're not part of that. But hey, here you go. I still want you to be successful, because at the end, I just want everybody to win.
Totally. Well, that's the driving attitude, right? And there's lots of ways to help people solve their problems. And if we're the solution primarily through our service or product, great. If not,
Yeah,
we still want to help them, right? And
exactly.
having that connector mindset is a big part of it, especially with the way, things are now with social and everything. It's this, all this ecosystem. And I've been the beneficiary of that many times, of that kind of, you know, serendipity, right? Of just
Hmm.
getting a call from somebody or an email from somebody I'd never heard of before. And they're like, hey, this person referred him. Like, wow, that's cool, So it does come back around to you. And it's definitely a nicer way to do business for sure, right?
Yeah, and that's the part of, again, back to relationship building. You're building relationships with humans. I don't care how many chat GPTs are going to be out there, we're still humans, right? There's still going to be a human along the process in some way that's going to answer something, right? So how are you going to nurture that relationship and connect with them and be memorable in a way that that you're listening and that you're genuine in your interaction with them, and doing it in a way that doesn't feel salesy or manipulative, or, some, you know, dark traits in the sense of setting things up and, here's what you get, but that this is what it really is. And just really understanding the simplicity of it. A lot of these pushy sales folks, I don't know if you look at some of these sales pages, they're so long. And you just keep scrolling, and I'm just like, I know myself, I don't want to scroll that long, right? So if you're losing me, I can only imagine, who else you're losing, right? And if you have to continuously keep proving yourself along the way, then you're really not getting to the point of what you have to offer. So I enjoy having simplicity in my services and my processes and how I work with clients, being very clear, keeping things simple, keeping forms and presentations and instructions in a very clear and concise way. Folks are already going through enough stressors as it is, and I don't want to add to that. So I want to just show up in a way that's very clear, concise, consistent, and predictive, in order for them to start creating solutions during a tumultuous time.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because the long sales page is something that's irked me for as long as I can remember them existing. And it all, those things started from like the email drip, or there was be an AdWords campaign on Google, and then somebody put their email in for an ebook, and then the landing page would be like, you'd be scrolling forever. And I remember maybe a few months ago, I was there was like a coaching app available that I was really interested in. I thought, oh, this will be cool. I can try it out. And they had like this webinar thing going, and it was like 2 hours, and it was like, okay, great. This is really cool. I want to try it. Let me try it. And then it was like, oh, but you're going to also get this. It was like an infomercial from hell, basically. Right. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Oh, but you're also going to get, I'm like, stop, please. Like, it's too much. Right.
Overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming. And I'm glad you brought that up, because again, people that are trying to figure this out, looking around them, it's natural to look at other examples of what they think is working, especially when you think about the influencers out there that are like, this is what you have to do to sell more, whatever. And there's a lot of those very long, very complex, very hard sell, overbearing, overdone kinds of approaches. And I just wanted to, you know, thank you for bringing that up from somebody other than just myself, who's saying, look, it's okay to be clear. It's okay to be concise and short, because I personally think that's a lot more powerful. And I'm
Well, all
sure
the
there's plenty of
biggest
people that,
brands are very concise and very
yeah.
to the point. I mean, let's look at all these Fortune 500 companies, 100 companies. Look at their branding, their logos, their name. They're not. You go to even their company website. It's a couple of pages. They get to the point, and if you want to find out, here you can reach out and find out more, but they understand that they have a couple of seconds of your attention. So that requires you to be very cunning in having them to want to learn more. And if you're doing that and overwhelming somebody who's already overwhelmed, who's trying to find a solution, and you're overwhelming them with more choices and all these things, they're not going to be excited about this. It's going to look like more drudgery for them, and they get lost in that. So sometimes folks think that oh, add more stuff. No, less is more. Get to the point. If you can't get to the point, then I don't know. We need to reconsider this.
Exactly. If you can't figure out how to distill your message and the value and what it is you bring that's different, all those good things in a way that's clear and concise, I think that's part of the problem is that I don't want to call it laziness, because I think some people really just think longer is better because that's what they've
Mm-hmm.
been around. But it's like it's much harder. I don't know what the quote is, but I remember, like, sorry it took me so long to write this, but basically, I had to make it shorter. I'm butchering that, but it's like it's harder to make things concise, right? Um, as we wrap up, I wanted to see if you had any tips, advice that you could share with other entrepreneurs, other founders, people that are even coaches and consultants as well, to help them make those decisions on what types of problems to focus on solving, the types of solutions they want to focus on, the ideal customers, the type of customers that they want to focus on. Just any kind of last parting words of advice that you can share.
Sure. Getting very clear, like we always talk about who your customer is, but also very clear in the process of how do you acquire them and how do you filter them to make sure that they're going into the right shoots of, whether they're going to work with you or get referred out, or maybe they're not ready for that. So getting very clear as to what the customer journey is so that you understand what you need to do at the end of it when somebody is ready to work with you. And also not be afraid of doing things differently and standing out amongst your competitors. A lot of folks, and we see this a lot in social media, everybody often does the same thing that other people are doing. Part of marketing is to get somebody's attention and have a conversation with a stranger, right? And if your marketing and your branding really stands out, you have an opportunity. You just added a couple more seconds to them paying attention to who you are and learning more about you. Often, folks play it very safe in marketing or in branding in the sense of, well, these are the colors, these are the things that, a lot of people around me are doing, so I'm going to do the same thing. No, you're just going to be caught up in the sea of sameness. And if anything, what we've learned in the last couple of years is that you really need to stand out in order to be considered. And if you're afraid of standing out, it's going to be very hard for you to be chosen amongst your competitors. So being okay with standing out. I know it's off the beaten path and it makes you look like the weird one or, the off one, but the right people who are aligned to your messaging that is clear and concise, and you're clear as to who your client is going to follow you. And the folks who are not, they'll go somewhere else, and that's okay too. But folks need to be okay with understanding that there's a vetting process and there's a natural, client journey that progresses in that they can't force.